Okay, so you're going to go into the graphing practice assignment here, okay, and you'll see, hopefully in a second, here's what you need. Just open that one up, okay, and I'm going to run through here the tutorial on how you make a line graph using Google Sheets. Now, I've already made up a few series of data so we can see kind of how it does that, also how we might graph more than one series of data on a single graph. Okay, that'll be the last one that we do, but we'll start running through that. Has everybody got it to this? Okay, I'll give you a minute. All right, so the first thing you need obviously is a set of data to graph. So you need it set up like this. When you're setting it up in Google Sheets, you do need the first column to be the manipulated variable. That is the one that's going to go on the x-axis. Okay, Google Sheets defaults to column 1 being the x-axis and all the other columns going on the y. All right, so what I do once I have my data is I click in my first box and I highlight everything. A couple of things about entering data. You'll notice that my column titles have the name of the name I want on the axis as well as the units. I have no units attached to the numbers. There's a reason for that. Google Sheets gets really confused if you have numbers and letters in the same box because it doesn't know how to graph letters, okay? Because you can't. And so it won't even give you the option for the scatter plot graph that we need if you have units in these boxes here. All right, so if this ended up being like here, this was 4 meters, I would not want to type 4m in there because now I won't be able to make a graph because Google Sheets won't understand what I've written. Okay, so put the units at the top and just have the numbers, the actual data, in the boxes. Okay, so I highlight everything and then I go up to Insert. Right, and I click on Insert and I go all the way down to where it says Chart. Okay, and when I click on that, Google Sheets spits out a bunch of bad recommendations. Okay, I don't want any of those. I want to go over to Chart Types, okay, which is the middle option there. And I'm going to leave this check mark where it is, which is use row 1 as headers. That means it's going to use those as essentially the labels for each axis. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here until I get to Scatter Plot. Okay, so it's about halfway down, and it says scatter, and I want the scatter on the left with the small dots. Okay, when I click on that, it gives me exactly what I want my graph to look like. Okay, once I have selected that, then I'm going to go to customization. Customization is where you put in your title, your labels for your axes, okay, where you can get it to put the best fit line on, where you can get it to spit out the equation for the line, all of that kind of stuff. That all happens in customization. So you click on that, okay, and the first thing it says is title. Right now it's put time in seconds and position in meters. Okay, I don't like having and in there. Usually I would put like versus, time versus position. And if I had a context for this graph, you know, dog running or ant crawling or whatever it happened to be, okay, I would put that in there as part of the title as well. And usually whatever you update in here, it updates pretty quickly. Like once you click away from that, it'll make the change. Okay, you can change things like the color of the title, the font, okay, all that kind of stuff if you want to. Okay, for right now, I'm going to leave it there. The next thing down is legend. For the most part, you're going to leave that where it is on the right-hand side and not do much changing with that. Okay, the next thing we want to mess with is axis. Right now, the axis is labeled as horizontal, so I'm putting on a label for the x-axis. So right now, I'm going to go down into the title field here, and I'm going to put in that on the x-axis is time in seconds. Right? And you can have it slant the labels or whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. Okay? Then I'm going to click up here where it says axis horizontal. I'm going to click on the little triangle here because now I have to do my y-axis. It calls them horizontal and left vertical, but it's the same thing. Okay? And in there, that's where I have the position data in meters. Okay? So now I've got a title. I've got labeled axes on my graph. Okay, it's starting to come together. Notice though, that thing we struggled the most with yesterday, picking the scale, that was done automatically for us. We didn't even have to think about it. Okay, Google Sheets automatically spreads it out so it takes out the whole graph, okay, figures out the scale for you. All right, so I'm going to go down a little bit further here. The next thing down is grid lines. Okay, you can change that if you want to. I generally leave major grid lines in. Okay, that's what it has right now, essentially every 5. I put in minor grid lines. Okay, I put in more, just so that it looks a little more graph-like. Okay, and then I go back up here. That's just so it only put them for the left vertical, right? So they've only gone across. I also want ones going down. Okay, so I'm going to go down there and do the same thing. Put it in at 10. Now it looks a little more grid-like. Okay. So you go up here back to axis, horizontal, okay, and put in more grid lines. You don't necessarily have to do that. For me, personal preference, I like to have the grid lines. Okay. Everybody with me here? Where did I lose you? Okay, just follow like you understand what I said, not necessarily were you able to do it. Okay? All right. Going to scroll down a little bit further here, okay, and it's talking about series, okay? The series means the data series, the set of data that you have. There's only one on this graph, okay, and that's these blue dots, right? So it's automatically colored them as blue, okay? It's made the point size 7px, but you can make it big or small, okay? You made it like giant, although that looks kind of dumb, okay? So you can make them big or small, it doesn't really matter. You can make them whatever shapes you want. If you have more than one series of data on a graph, it's advisable to make your points different shapes and different colors. That way they're easy to tell apart. Okay. Right, data labels, you don't really need to put anything on that part. Okay, but if you scroll down a little bit further here, you see where it says trend line. It's actually right at the very bottom. Okay, right now it says none. That's why there isn't one. But if you click on it, you can put in either a linear one, an exponential one, or a polynomial one. Now, we don't have an exponential relationship here. This is a pretty linear graph, so we want a best fit line. That means we want linear relationship. So if I click on linear, it draws the best fit line for me. Okay? Now, once I click on linear, I get more options down below. Okay? And one of the options that I definitely want to have is what my label for that line is right now. Right now, the label for my best fit line is trend line for data series 1, which is not great. It's not very descriptive or, eye-catching or anything like that. So what we want to do then is use the equation. And this is where Google Sheets will spit out y equals mx plus b for that line. So when I click on that, there's my equation. It tells me that the slope of my line is 1.108, okay, and that my y-intercept is 2.114. Right? It's done the hard work for me, which is nice. Now I can use that graph to calculate other things like extrapolate for how far this thing would go in 50 seconds, okay, or how long would it take it to go 50 meters or whatever. I can now extrapolate using that equation for points beyond the graph. Okay, at this point, that graph's done. Okay, now I just go over to insert here, and it'll plug it in. So now my graph is all done. Now, typically, you would be doing this for a lab report. So you would need to insert it into a Google Doc. Okay, I don't want you to leave it here in this file. Right, so I'm just going to open up a Google Doc here real quick. Okay, now I can take this graph, okay, and I can go to copy the chart. Okay, bring it over here and paste it in. All right, so now it would be in my lab report, and I'm all good to go. Now, one thing that we have noticed a little bit in using Google Sheets is that it doesn't, there sometimes is trouble moving over the actual data chart, okay, over into Google Docs. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well, because usually I'm going to want both. Okay, the big thing is that people try and copy it when both are highlighted. When you first insert this chart, like I did a minute ago, it had a blue line around it, and these were still highlighted. So if you click copy, all it does is copy the chart, the graph again. Okay, it doesn't actually copy this data. So you got to click in a vacant box, and then go back, click in here. Okay, highlight it all again, and then press Control-C to copy, and then you can bring it over into this document here, and maybe get a text area here, right? And then click Control V, and it brings it over. Okay, so now you have both inserted into your lab report. It's as simple as that. Okay. Once you get practiced up with it, it gets quite a bit easier. Once you've done it a few times, building a graph in Google Sheets is 10 times faster than building it by hand. I'd say that's conservative, okay, because it does all the grunt work. All right. Okay, so if I want to graph multiple sets of data on the same graph, which is what we're going to be doing on Monday when we run multiple carts down the hallway. We're going to have a chart that looks a lot like this. Okay, so we do the same thing, but we go to Insert Chart, same as before. Okay, and for right now, it's only showing one set of data for me. That's okay. We're going to be able to fix that. Okay, I'm going to click on Scatter. Actually, click over on Bubble, then back to Scatter. I don't know why it does that, but for some reason it resets itself when you click away from the one that's currently highlighted. Now I've got all three runners. Okay, I've got a labeled axis, a labeled axis. It's pretty much all set to go for me in this setup. Okay, so I go over to customization and notice which two rows are checked here. Okay, in case yours did not check the bottom two need to be checked. Okay, so I go to customization. Okay, and I don't want to leave it as runner one, position versus time. Okay, I probably want to call it like just position versus time, or race one, or something like that, if I'm comparing three runners. Okay, I'll leave my horizontal axis labeled the way it is, but I don't like the label they put on here, so I'm going to edit that. And I'm just going to take out runner one, right, and say position in meters. Okay, I could put on the additional grid lines if I want to as well, like I usually do. Okay, just have to go back up and do that for the horizontal axis as well. Okay, but again, that's not necessarily needed. Then I go down to series. Here's where you're going to get your three separate lines, because now there's more than one series. Okay, right now runner one is selected. Okay, so I'm going to say, all right, we'll leave that as blue, but I'm probably going to use something other than circles. That way I can maybe tell them apart a little bit better. I'll probably make my red ones smaller when I get to the red ones, just so that they're not overlapping so badly. I'm going to go down here to trend line and say linear. So I've got a line now for the first runner, okay, for the blue set of points. I'm going to go down here and make sure that I make my label use equation. So here's what we got. We've got now the line with the label. Now I need to go back up. I need to go back up here, guys, paying attention, and do the next series, which is runner two. Right now, it's big red circles. I'm going to make those smaller. I went up here to series and clicked runner two. Okay, when I click on that, I just finished runner one. Now I'm on runner two. Okay, then I click the point size to make it a little bit smaller, okay, so that it wasn't overlapping my blue triangles quite so much. Okay, in fact, I might even go back to runner one and make those triangles smaller. Okay, that way they're not overlapping the red dots quite as much. Okay, now for runner two, I need to go down here and put in my trend line, linear. It's there now. Put in the equation for that, same as we did before. And now I've got y equals mx plus b for runner two. So right now, looking at runner one and runner two, who's faster? Runner one's faster. Their slope is greater than runner two, and that's in meters per second. So that's their speed. That's their velocity right there. Okay. Now I got to do the same thing for the third runner. So I go up to series, click runner three. Okay. Come back down here. His points are quite a bit different, so I don't think I need to change necessarily the size or shape or anything like that. Okay. But I am going to make the trend line linear and put the equation in for them. They are clearly the fastest runner. Their slope is over 12. All right, and then copying and pasting it is the same as the other ones we did. All right, so that's how you get more than one data set with the best fit line on the same graph.